If you sell a service online like coaching or consulting and you want to consistently attract people who actually have the money to invest in your services, well then there are some specific things that you need to be very consciously aware of. And in this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about the way you need to present yourself, your messaging, the language that you use to consistently attract buyers with money. So before we get stuck into this, I want to put a very clear disclaimer and caveat out. And that is that with everything that I'm about to speak about, there are of course exceptions to the rule and outliers. And we'll come into this in a lot more detail when I speak about specific examples. But I want to make that really clear off the bat because I don't want you in the comments saying, but what about this guy who does that and this guy who does this? So the first thing that I want to touch on is appearance. When I speak about appearance, I'm talking specifically about you, the founder of the business's appearance. So if you're anything like me, you are a forward-facing founder. And all that essentially means is that you are the owner of the business and you are responsible for making the content, getting in front of camera, spreading the word of what you do. The things that we do and the way that we do those things have a direct knock-on effect to the perception of our brand and our business. So at the most basic level, things like the way you dress will have a downstream impact on the type of buyer that you attract to your services. Now, before we get stuck into this in a bit more detail here, I just want to put a caveat and a disclaimer out here. With everything that I'm about to say, there are of course outliers and exceptions to the rule. So we're just about to talk about appearance and how it impacts the type of person that you attract. But you could absolutely come up with examples of guys who break all of the rules. So classic example would be Alex Hormozi, okay? As a online entrepreneur, content creator, right? He kind of breaks all of the rules as to how you should present yourself. He wears a cap, he doesn't shave his beard, he wears a tank top, a flannel shirt, and shorts. Now, the reason that he's able to do that is because he has so much prestige, credibility, and authority in this space that it doesn't really matter about the way he dresses. But for 99.9% of us who are trying to sell our services, who are in the early stages of building our businesses and building our brands, we don't have that leverage. You could come up with your own unique way of presenting yourself, but you do run the risk of kind of missing the mark and just falling short entirely. So everything that I'm going to say here relates specifically to people who are, you know, in the early stages of their careers. So they're anywhere from sort of 10K per month to a couple of million a year. So the way that you dress is going to send a conscious or an unconscious signal to anybody who consumes your content. Now, if I rocked up on camera and my clothes had stains on them, this is just an extreme example, but if I had stains on my clothes, I was scruffy, I hadn't done my hair, I'm going to be sending a really bad first impression and signal to people who actually have money to invest. Rich and successful people, they are incredibly critical about where they deploy their capital, where they spend their money. And whether it's conscious or it's unconscious, the way that I present myself, the clothes that I wear, is going to have a massive impact on whether or not I get hired by these people or not. So that's the first thing that you need to address is how am I showing up in my marketing every single day? Am I dressing appropriately? Could I smarten up a little bit? This is the most basic level of getting your appearance right to attract buyers with money. So the second thing I want to talk about is quality. And when I talk about quality, I'm talking about the quality of the content that you're actually producing. And you can kind of chunk this down into several areas. You've got the quality of the equipment that you use. So the camera, the lighting, the audio, all of these things are going to enhance the overall production value. You've got the quality of the post-production work. So the editing, you know, are you using B-roll? Are there animations? You know, is there clean edits happening, right? I'm obviously not too technical in that area, as you can tell. And then the third area that you can chunk this down into is pre-production. So the time, effort, and energy that's gone into actually planning the idea, curating your thoughts, you know, scripting out the intro, actually spending time to make sure that this is a high quality piece of content that goes out into the market. So if you get these three things right, you will consistently attract good quality buyers with money, okay? Successful people who have achieved anything in life, you know, whether it's finances or whatever, they have an eye for other successful people. And it's kind of like this whole success leaves clues kind of gig, right? They can see when somebody is just throwing stuff together haphazardly, and they can see when other creators and business owners are actually spending the time and the due diligence to put out good quality stuff. We saw a trend recently, and it's kind of still ongoing, where you had a couple of content creators who went down the lo-fi route. Right? No edits. It was shot on an iPhone, no script, just kind of yapping along, freestyling. You had like your Sam Sulek, you had William Brown, you have a couple of guys who were playing that game. And what happens is more and more business owners trying to emulate that style, and it creates a pendulum swing where it goes in the complete opposite direction. So if I was to tell you to hedge your bets in one area, it would always be err on the edge of quality. Okay. Successful people love quality information, and it sends an unconscious signal that you're doing good work. And that's going to be kind of bled into the work that you do behind your paywalls as well in your services. So the third thing I want to talk about is the language that you use and how that kind of interacts with the psychology of the buyers that you attract. So if I want to attract rich and wealthy people, there's a few things that I really need to be conscious of. Rich, successful people are smart. And if I try and pull the wool over their eyes by making wild, unrealistic claims, I'm going to lose trust and credibility with those people immediately. So I'm a business coach. Okay. I work with online coaches and consultants. I help them with content strategy. I help them with systems and operations. I help them with all of these different things. If I was to sit here and say, join my program, Remote Pro, and you'll make 100K in 30 days guaranteed, every rich and successful person would hear that and their alarm bells would go ringing off and they would steer a million miles away from me. Okay, because they're smart. They know it's bullshit. Their bullshit filter would be going crazy. However, if I talk about realistic claims, if I show social proof of the things that I'm talking about, if I show the case studies and I talk about the risks and the downsides and the effort that is required to achieve these results, then I'm going to build trust and credibility with those people, and they're more inclined to invest in me. So it's really important that you don't get sucked into the kind of $100 million offers, make it so good that people feel stupid saying no thing. Okay. Be realistic, talk about downside, and you will do a much better job of building credibility and trust with these people. The other thing is that there are language that they use specifically that they will resonate with. So capital, investments, return on investment, downside. Try and use the language that these rich and successful people use, and they will see you as one of them. The final thing that I want to touch on is lifestyle cues. Now, this is the hardest one to get right because I honestly think there's a bit of a balance here, and you can go too far one way and people think you're just a bit of a knob. Well, that's at least what I think. So what I mean by lifestyle cues is rich and successful people are typically attracted to working with other rich and successful people. Now, the reason for that is because it's a signal to them that the person is doing good work. Okay. Now, there are ways that I can show that I am rich and successful. And as I said a moment ago, there's a tasteful way that you can do this, or you can go too far the other way and people think that you're just a bit of a knob. So if I was to get in my Land Rover Defender or my Porsche every single day and hold my steering wheel with my Rolex on and take a picture of it and put it on my social media every single day, sure, I would be flexing that I've got some money and I've got some cars and I've got a watch and yada, 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 but it's distasteful and it's going to turn more people off than it's going to turn on, in my opinion. However, if I'm filming some content and my car happens to be in the background, or if I'm stood at the bottom of the garden and the horses are playing in the field, or if I'm recording content in my bespoke content studio, these are all subtle cues that I am also, well off and successful. Okay. I don't have to be overt about displaying those things, but I am conscious about showing those little lifestyle cues that are going to attract the right people. So hopefully you found this video useful. Start integrating these into your content marketing, and you'll find that if you can be consistent, you will more readily attract rich and successful buyers. If you've liked this video, then you'll definitely like this one. And also I've got a free community with extra resources and training for online coaches and consultants below.